arrived at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico City for the running of the Mexican Grand Prix, the final North American race of the season. Coming into this week, only one driver again has made the news this week. The only team news for today comes from the renamed Sauber team, as they have announced that Hungarian driver Bence Valdinga will remain with the team for another season. Bence has had a decent debut season despite a few bumpy moments along the way. He currently lies 16th in the Drivers' Championship, 1 point ahead of his now retired teammate Emilio Wilson, and his team Alfa Romeo lie 9th in the Constructors, 5 points behind McLaren. Although the first half of the season hasn't gone according to plan, Bence during the second half of the season has put in some good performances, getting a load of P10 finishes, with many calling him a P10 merchant, despite this season's Alfa Romeo going backwards compared to last season. Bence will be relieved to know that he'll still be with the team when they revert back to the Sauber name, and he'll be hoping the 2023 car is a lot better than this season's car. The only question remaining at Sauber is who will be Bence's teammate, with Emilio Wilson now retired, and the fact that Bence's teammate for the final 4 races, Dominic Decelli, hasn't put Sauber down in any of his choices. 4 contenders emerged, which consist of current AlphaTauri driver David Kupak, current Lamborghini driver Rahul Patel, who's made it clear in his choices that he wants to leave Lamborghini at the end of the season, current F2 Championship contender Hento Selenome, and current World Champ Car Championship contender and current Alfa Romeo reserve driver Gabriel Gomez, should he miss out on his first choice, which is Toyota. It will be interesting to see who partners Bence for 2023. And that is it for this week's edition of the GP4 OC News. The next team news will break next week at the Bahrain Grand Prix in Sakhir. Who will be announced next? Tune into practice next Tuesday at the popular Bahrain International Circuit just outside the country's capital city, Manama. Hello everybody and welcome to round 18 of the 2022 GP4 Offline Championship. We are here at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico City for the Mexican Grand Prix, the 4th to last race of the 2022 season. I am JW97 and I'm joined today by my arch nemesis Ra.
Yep, hello everybody, and of course it's going to be bottom drive for practice and see what happens.
Yep, indeed, as we're about to get underway for this practice session. And, of course, the big news story coming into this race, of course, is that this is the first race for Dominic Decelli, of course. He'll be in the Alfa Romeo. You will be seeing him in a little bit as well, especially with his helmet and also number that's been updated on the Alfa Romeo. So, it's going to be interesting to see what Dominic Decelli can do in the final 4 races with Alfa Romeo, of course. And, well, it should be quite an interesting 4 races to go this season. And, well, the championship definitely getting interesting indeed. The tyres, of course, we're using for the Mexican Grand Prix is hard tyres. And here is Dominic Decelli in the Alfa Romeo with his helmet. And it should be very interesting to see what he does. Of course, replacing Emilio Wilson, who is now retired from the OC after her home race at Cota. So Dominic now taking her place for the remainder of the season. Of course, doesn't have Alfa Romeo, or Sauber, I should say, in any of his choices. So really, this is the only 4 races he's going to spend at this team. Whether he will be on the grid next season, though, is another question, because he is, of course, linked with Ferrari, along with a couple of other contenders. So we'll have to wait and see on that one, really. So anyway, practice is underway. We might as well talk about the other news as well that came in the news video. Bence Valdinga, speaking on the topic of Sauber, will be remaining with the team for another season. And, well, you surprised or not surprised, Ra, with that one?
A bit, but of course, within his last few races, the performances he made the last few races, not really. He stepped it up. And yeah, of course, his main rivals, Kupak and Patel, of course, Patel didn't have the best of first seasons, but he stepped it up in the second half. But of course, what ain't announced yet, but will he be announced to be his teammate? We'll see. Kupak, he has dropped a bit, but he has been a bit unlucky with incidents that weren't his fault, of course. But he is still there, and he is producing good results.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, given it's the fourth to last race, I'll obviously be asking your predictions later on, of course. But yeah, Bens Valdinga remaining at Sauber for another season. I think he'll be pretty happy with that one. Of course, obviously people were naming him a P10 merchant throughout this season, really, because he seems to always creep in to 10th positions, really. And, well, could we see the same thing happening next season with Sauber? Who knows, really, as Griffiths just rounds the final corner there to start his lap on the hard tyres, of course, as mentioned, that we are using here at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. As he's just started his lap now then on the racetrack along with DV Coupot. You did touch upon Coupot's kind of slipped off a bit. Well, you mentioned that, but of course at the last race at Dakota, Coupot did actually put in a very good performance despite the fact that he got caught up in an accident involving Jake Galloway and Roman Quagg, of course.
Yeah, he was unlucky not to get P4 from that after that incident. He just got caught out. I mean, at best he would have been P6, but he was pretty unlucky not to get P4 after that incident because it was right at the racing line. So pretty unlucky from him. But P6 he got it at the end by overtaking Patel. So that's good from him. His last few races have been great, so that's been good for him.
It has indeed, and he'll be hoping he's done enough to possibly get a seat for next season. We're right on board with Bens Valdinga, the man who, of course, will be staying at this team next season when they revert back to the Sauber name, and pretty much now he can kind of relax for the remainder of the season, really, knowing that he will still be in the top class next season. Looks like he's actually being overtaken by someone into this chicane there. It's one of the Hasses there. That looks to be Michael Mocha that's just gone by into that chicane, really. Might as well talk about as well some other things that happened during the COTA race. George Roque picking up the victory at the last race at COTA, really. He had a bit of pressure from Franco Lopez, but in the end, he managed to control it. And of course, coming into the season, he hadn't had a victory with Red Bull, and now he's already got 2 in the pocket.
Yeah, could he get 2 consecutive wins, back-to-back wins? We'll see. He's looking good so far. I mean, you could say he's an outsider, but he's like a way outsider here in this championship. But it's realistically between Bird and Lopez.
Indeed, of course, we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of Roque, who's actually at the top of the timing sheet, he's just made a little bit of an error going through into that chicane. We might as well talk about Franco Lopez as well. We touched on him a little bit as we look at a replay of Roque's mistake of him locking up the first corner there as he does a 1 minute 15.612 in the Red Bull. But Lopez, a good race for him at COTA, but just didn't have enough in the end to beat Roque.
Yeah, just didn't have enough to beat Roque. He was just, of course, wasn't enough. He was there with Roque, but of course couldn't get past and had the opportunity, failed, and of course he was fighting with Brennan. Of course, made a bit of contact again with Brennan, but still survived and finished second.
Indeed, and he was able to extend the championship. It probably should have been a lot more that he extended his championship by Evan Byrne if it wasn't for what happened in that one particular lap where we had all that chaos involving Quagg and Galloway, although that did happen right behind Byrne, of course. But the other thing as well about that as well is the Alfa Romeo is very shiny, it seems, for this. That's very interesting, but it's not too bad. It's not like the shiny cars that we've had in the past, of course. But yeah, that's obviously bearable with the Alfa Romeo. But as I was saying, with that whole podium thing with Evan Byrne getting third, he wouldn't have got third if it wasn't for Jesus Perennin's engine failure. Once again, the Spaniard running into bad luck this season.
Yeah, he's been Renault all the time, and it's clear to see why he wants to leave Renault. I feel like he should have left Renault last season, but of course he was having a great season with Renault. So I think I can understand why he stayed at Renault for this season, but now we know why he's leaving Renault leaving Renault next at the end of the season, and it's pretty clear.
Yeah, well, to be fair, he did actually put Renault in his choices, but because he put Mercedes down as his first choice, and because they're actually behind Renault in the pick order, it meant that Renault was not valuable for him, really. But we obviously know that, of course, next season it will be Roman Quagg and Johannes Martins at Renault next season. Where Perenin will go next season, it remains a mystery. Whether it's Mercedes or Toyota, we'll have to wait and see, of course, and be very interested to see who ends up getting those seats. Speaking of Prinning, he's just gone into 11th place. Well, speaking of the man who was lucky with all that, Evan Byrne, it's fair to say that in the last race, it just seemed like his pace from Sepang just continued into Kota. He just didn't seem to have any pace, but in the end, a very lucky podium for Evan Byrne and ensured that Lopez didn't pull away too much on him in the championship.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, he was stuck behind the trailer cars at the start, and he did drop down to 10th at one point because of an error. So, yeah, it was just a messy weekend for him.
Very, very messy weekend for him indeed, and he'll definitely want to bounce back here this week as well. Of course, Red Bull, in theory, should be good around here, although it is arguably to say that the last few years, Mercedes have had some wins around this track as well, and have looked particularly strong. So, yeah, that's that. Of course, Red Bull's last win here came in 2020 with Nicolas Gau, although you could argue say that was down to the luck because of what happened with the two Mercedeses involving Roland Motrin's Racing Point. But, yeah, that's pretty much that, really, as Galloway now makes his way down this back straight before heading towards the next chicane, the arena section of the track where the old baseball stadium used to be and where the podium actually is located around this racetrack. But yeah, that's that. Obviously a benefactor as well from that whole chaos that happened in that one lap, of course. What's Haas in their home race, 4th and 5th in the end, with Mocho just outpacing Kloss. A very good haul of points for them, and they were able to get back up to 4th in the Constructors.
Yeah, indeed, overtaking Lamborghini is what they need, but of course that battle for 4th is still not over. It could all change, so the consistency, it's not there, but of course consistency is important to keep get 4th in the championship.
Yep, indeed, and we'll be fascinated to see who ends up getting 4th in that Constructors' Championship fight in the end, because it's very, very close between those 4 teams, indeed. Even Ferrari's still in there, despite the fact that they have been kind of lacking the last few races, it's fair to say, with quite a lot of bad luck. Meanwhile, Michael Mocho has just gone up into 3rd place. Speaking of Hasses, as we look at Kloss, who just made a mistake going into the baseball stadium, now another racetrack, before approaching Mansell Corner, as this is known as. But yeah, a very interesting race at Kota, of course, and well, it should be very interesting to see. Now, of course, we do have Dominic Decelli in the Alfa Romeo for the remainder of the season, of course. He's currently down in last at the moment in the Alfa Romeo, but how do you think he'll get on in his remaining 4 races?
I think he's got to do the best he can. Of course, he is in contention for Ferrari, so he's got to do the best he can to probably take the Ferrari seat. Of course, Ferrari's not having a good run of races, but he is a contender for Ferrari. Of course, Roke is if he misses out on Red Bull, but knowing his form, I think he might stay at Red Bull, but you never know what can happen. It can all change, but he's got to take this chance and try and fight be in contention, in serious contention for that Ferrari seat.
Okie dokie, and well, it'll be very interesting to see who ends up partnering Chris Chatfield next season. Of course, we know that this guy's not going to be at Ferrari next season because he didn't sign up in time, as he's currently up on his personal best in the first sector. Jake Galloway, who's currently in 8th position, I think that is. Yes, P8 at the moment. His teammate Chatfield currently up in 5th place at this stage. Here is Dominic Decelli, meanwhile, who's in the Alfa Romeo, getting overtaken by one of the Aston Martins there. I wonder if he's running a little bit of a draggy car. I'm not sure. Or maybe the Ferrari's just not that quick on the straight compared to the Mercedes engine in the back of the Aston Martin there. As we run on more with Jake Galloway, he's just making his way around into the S's now then. And so Galloway will now approach the section itself. As Yuri jokingly saying there, Ferrari asked Galloway to contract negotiate, and Galloway had his phone on mute. So I guess we'll run with that, I guess. But anyway, as we look at Jose Willis, who's currently stuck in a train of cars at this stage at the moment. And speaking of McLaren, some more points for them at Kota last time out. Kirishima DeRosa, arguably you could say, was very lucky to get those points, but either way, points are points, and well, it meant that he has hold the fort for a moment, because Motric has made a mistake going for into the S's, but luckily didn't rejoin into the path of that Alfa Romeo there. But as mentioned there, that was Bence Valdinger he nearly came across there. But yeah, as mentioned, really, it was just a fantastic. It was just a good day for McLaren, really, because as a result, they've been able to extend a little bit to Alfa Romeo and the constructors.
Yeah, it's what they need, considering that Alfa Romeo did score points in the last 3 races going into Austin. So yeah, pretty much in point for McLaren, and of course it's not been the greatest of seasons with him with BMW engines, but they pretty much have to hope that they can do better.
Yep, indeed, as Quag just making his way out of that right-hander there. And I find it a little bit curious how Valdinger's got a shiny car and DeChelli hasn't. That's a little bit of a bizarre one there. But yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one. But anyway, Lopez just goes up into 8th place meanwhile. In the Mercedes, meanwhile, he's a little bit off at the moment. Maybe he's holding something back. I'm not particularly sure at this stage, as that's pretty much that, really. So, obviously, we've got 4 races left now in this championship, and despite the fact that there are still 4 races left to go, and effectively 3 news videos left as a result of that, we still have quite a lot of seats to be determined in 2023. And, well, to be exact, we've still got, if I count the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We've still got half the grid that still needs to be announced for next season, of course. 11 seats have been filled. We've still got 11 seats left to go. And might as well ask your predictions here for these remaining seats, given that we are at the 4th to the last race of the season. So, I guess here we go then, trying to test you a little bit here. So, we've got, to be exact, for anybody who's wondering what these seats are we've got left, we've got 1 seat left at Aston Martin, 1 seat left at Ferrari, 1 seat left at Haas, 2 seats at Lamborghini, 1 seat at McLaren, 2 seats at Mercedes, 1 at Red Bull, 1 at Sauber, and 1 at the returning Toyota team. So we'll start off, obviously the 2 teams so far who are the only teams who have confirmed both of those seats are Renault and Williams. Renault, of course, having Roman Quagg and Johannes Martins, and Williams having Felix Sontag and Julius Anderson, as Rokin proves a little bit further to go, 2 temps clear than Armar Carr. So might as well actually roll. We'll start off, we'll go in alphabetical order, starting off with Aston Martin. Now obviously Andrei Sazonov has already been announced to be making his debut with the team next season, but in terms of who you believe will be his teammate, who do you think that's going to be in your opinion?
I haven't even thought of Aston Martin's competition. I don't know who the competition is. Can you remind me who they are?
Oh, the competition so far from what we are looking at with Aston Martin are as follows, really. We've got, obviously, Gabriel Gomez, if he misses out on those his 2 other choices, which are Toyota and, of course, the renamed Sauber team. Of course, Gabriel Gomez still the reserve driver for Alfa Romeo, in case anybody was curious. And Dorian Shelley still the official reserve driver for Ferrari, despite the fact he's over at Alfa Romeo. We also have as well Joseph Frederick Souto, a fellow F2 racer for Andrei Sazonov as well. And just going to quickly double check as well, because I know there is another contender, but I just need a refresher of who that is. So there are 2, of course, Joseph Frederick Souto and, of course, Gabriel Gomez, should he miss out on his 2 other choices. But the other one in particular, should my spreadsheet load up eventually, taking a bit of an age, is, just having a look right now, is Victor Ibobo, who's the other one. He's currently in the, I guess he's kind of an outsider in the DTM title fight at the moment, but I think he's actually got himself back in it recently after the races that both Parrish and Gonzalez had this past weekend. So they're the 3 main contenders at Aston Martin. Who do you think's the more favourable out of those 3?
I think more favourable will be Gabriel Gomez, should he miss out on Toyota and Sauber.
Do you think Gabriel Gomez will get the Aston Martin seat then in the end?
Yeah, it does depend on if he misses out on Toyota and Sauber.
Okay, well that's your prediction for Aston Martin then. We'll move on to Ferrari. You've obviously talked about them a little bit earlier on. Of course, Chris Chatfield will still be with the team for another season. Of course, there is one available seat at Ferrari because, of course, Jake Galloway is not going to be at Ferrari next season, or even in the top class at all, because he missed out on the sign-up. So, who do you think is going to be Chris's new teammate next season?
That's going to be a tough one. I think if Roach stays, it would probably be stays at Red Bull. It will probably be Andre Federi, most likely. But you never know who could get that Ferrari seat. Could be an outsider like Shelley if he does well in the final races. But for me, I'm going to say Federi just now. That does depend if Roach stays at Red Bull.
You're going with Federi then for Ferrari. Okay, then. As moving over to Haas then, of course, Marcus Kloss is obviously staying at the team for another season after what has been a very impressive return to the series, even picking up a victory at the Belgian Grand Prix. I think a very popular victory, it must be said, when that happened. But of course, his teammate is still yet to be decided. Of course, Michael Mocho could still be his teammate next season, but he does have some competition in the form of Laura Chong and Miklos Gau, should those 2 drivers miss out on either of those 2 Mercedes seats that are available. Of course, we know that there is at least one available because Franco Lopez is, of course, moving to Toyota. But in terms of who you believe will be Bartosz Kloss's teammate, Ra, who are you going to go with?
Hmm. I'm gonna go with Laura Chung actually. It really does depend because of course, Gao is in contention if he misses out on Mercedes. Macho is there, of course, he has it as his first choice. But I'm just gonna go with Laura Chung. That does depend if she misses out on Mercedes.
Laura Chong alongside Bartosz Klosten. Okay, moving over to the team that Laura Chong is currently at then, Lamborghini. 2 seats available for that. Of course, they are expected to have a new lineup next season because both Chong and Patel have made it clear they want to leave Lamborghini at the end of the season. So we're looking at 2 new drivers over at Lamborghini. Now, in your opinion, obviously at Ra, obviously the main contenders, of course, as we alluded to, I think a couple of weeks ago, in fact, when Julius Anderson got announced at the second Williams seat, was Florian Volker, Rubino Gonzalez, Robert Ionescu, Michael Mocho, should he miss out on Haas, and Jafari Blackwood, who's over in F2, should he miss out on his first 2 choices, which are Toyota and Sauber as well, I believe. Yes, Sauber is the other one that's his other choice. So, in your opinion, who do you believe will be at Lamborghini next season, Ra?
I think the first one I'm gonna say Florian Volker. I mean, he's having a great season at World Champ Car, and you just gotta hope he can continue that form in the final 2 races to end his amazing season on a high. Of course, he has had to disappoint to, but he had a decent season last season with McLaren in World Champ Car. Of course, 2020 in DTM didn't really help him a lot. But of course, since he is the reserve driver for Lamborghini, I'm gonna say Florian Volker for one of them. For the second one, either Rubinho Gonzalez or Michael Macho. I mean, Macho has a chance at Haas, but if he doesn't pick up, if his form is not good enough to be at Haas, to remain at Haas, then I think it will be him.
You're going to go with Michael Mocho at Lamborghini then?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going with Volker and Mocho then for Lamborghini. Okay, moving on to McLaren. Obviously, Kirishima De Rosa will, of course, be staying at the team for another season. But it's all really a question mark on who his teammate will be. Because, of course, Joseph Willows could stay at the team. But, of course, he's only got it as a backup, really. Because he's aiming to try and be at Mercedes next season, of course. So, do you think it will still be Joseph Willows alongside Kirishima De Rosa? Or do you think De Rosa's going to have a new teammate next season?
It's a possibility, but of course, Willis has been waiting for his third World Championship since forever, pretty much since after he won his 2008 World Championship, of course. And he has struggled to find it in other teams, of course, with Ferrari, and he, of course, struggled to get McLaren back up to glory, of course, with their BMW engines. And yeah, it's a shame, but I feel like I don't see Willow staying at McLaren, so I'm gonna say Wojtek Kulisic.
You're going to say Wojtek Kulizet will partner alongside Kirishima De Rosa. Okay, interesting. Of course, he is the F2 Championship contender as well. There is also another F2 Championship contender for McLaren. That is, of course, Nicholas Zorbach. But given how close it is, Ra thinks Kulizet will edge it in the end. Okay, very, very interesting. Could perhaps Kulizet in Prema's last season be the one to give Prema the title? Who knows, really? But anyway, moving over to Mercedes, and I think you kind of alluded to one of those seats already, but obviously 2 seats yet to be announced. Of course, Franco Lopez is leaving the team at the end of the season. He will be joining the returning Toyota team next season. So there is at least 1 seat, but do you think that both seats will change, or do you think Armar Carr will stay, Ra?
Knowing his season, it's kind of like what Joe Drake has had. I mean, he's yet to win, but he has struggled a lot more than what Roke has this last season. So yeah, I'm gonna say Armaka will stay at Mercedes. I think he will not like that at all, but it is what it is. I think he will stay at Mercedes, and his teammate for next season will be Joseph Willows.
You're going to go with Willows and Carr as a partnership. Of course, they were last teammates in 2018 back at Ferrari, and they've had a bit of frosty moments over the season. It's fair to say, Carr and Willows, but could be an interesting one indeed. So he's going with Carr and Willows for Mercedes. Moving over to Red Bull then, of course, Evan Byrne is obviously staying at the team for another season, of course, fighting for this season's championship. So given that you've said Carr is staying at Mercedes, I'm going to presume then you're going to say that Roke's going to remain at Red Bull.
Yep.
So I don't think we need to gloss over that. So he believes that Rote will stay at Red Bull for next season. Renault's already been secured, so we don't need to go through them. Moving over to Sauber, of course, we confirmed today that Benz Valdinga will be remaining with the team for another season. So really, it only comes down to who's going to be his teammate next season. Of course, Wilson is now retired, so it won't be her. And of course, Decelli didn't put Alfa Romeo in any of his choices, or Sauber, I should say, in any of his choices. So it won't be Decelli. So who do you believe will be Benz's new teammate next season, Ra?
Of course, Patel is in contention, same with Q-Puck. Of course, Gomez is there, but I've already said he will be at, I think he will be at Aston Martin if he misses out on Toyota and Sauber. So, and of course, Seto Sodanome, who's F2 championship contender. I think realistically, I think it'll be between Q-Puck and Patel. I'd say Q-Puck is going to get that Sauber seat.
You're going with Q-Pot to partner alongside Valdinga next season. And finally, the returning Toyota team. We've already mentioned it. Franco Lopez will be heading there next season to take on a new challenge in his career, of course. Obviously, he would love to win the championship in his final season with Mercedes before heading off to Toyota next season. So, with Franco already there, the question now remains on who will be his teammate. And in your opinion, Ra, who do you believe will be Lopez's teammate in 2023?
He's just spreading. This will be very interesting.
So you're going with the man who we're currently looking at right now, Jesus Perinin, to partner alongside Lopez. Of course, there has been some signs that maybe it could be a frosty relationship if they end up as teammates next season. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But Ravi's going with Perinin alongside Franco Lopez. So they are the predictions. Of course, you can leave your predictions in the stream chat if you want to, guys. And it'll be very interesting to see what these last 3 news videos have in store, really, at Bahrain, Argentina, and of course Abu Dhabi. So it will be very interesting indeed. Of course, we might as well mention as well, whilst on the topic of Argentina there, of course, for anybody who hasn't seen the news on Discord, and I will put it over on Twitter a little bit later on, but it was obviously announced as well that Yuri will not be hosting the Argentine Grand Prix because he's actually on a little holiday whilst that's all kicking off. Well, he's finished holidays around that time, and he's not going to be able to host Argentina. He is aiming to, of course, to host the finale at Abu Dhabi, but whether he will or not, we'll have to wait and see, of course. But, of course, it does mean that Flo, of course, the F2 and DTM host, will be hosting the Argentine Grand Prix. It will be his first top-class race that he will host, and, well, what a race for him to have as his debut top class race as the backup host, essentially, because well well, it's obviously we've never been to Argentina before, so what a task he's got in front of him.
Yeah, it's a big task he has, and the one time that Yuri doesn't host it has to be the new tracks that Flo as the backup host has to host.
Yep, and obviously it will be interesting to see how the top class copes around Balcarce as well. Of course, F2 will be racing there as well, so obviously he'll have a little bit of a warm-up, I guess, before he has to contend with the top class, and I'm pretty sure Yuri will send him over the track settings, really, that he needs to ensure that the top class works pretty well around there as well, which might also work for F2 as well. We'll have to wait and see, really. But anyway, as we have just under 17 minutes to go in this session currently, with just under 17 minutes to go. This is what the leaderboard currently looks like then in this practice session. Roke is at the top with Carr in second, Macho is in third with Byrne in fourth, Kloss is in fifth with Chatfield sixth, Quag is in 7th with De Rosa in 8th, Gall in 9th, Lopez in 10th, Galloway in 11th with Perrin in 12th, Willows in 13th, Patel in 14th, Decelli, his first weekend in the top class in 15th with Chung in 16th, Videri in 17th, Kupok 18th, Sontag 19th, Valdinga in 20th with Griffiths in 21st and Martins in 22nd position, as that's one of the Aston Martins being overtaken there, but I think that's Videri that Chatfield was overtaking there into the first corner and not Martin. So far the pack are separated by under 2 seconds, so that's pretty good to see. And Roke currently still at the top by 3 tenths out of car. Macho looking pretty impressive in 3rd position. And, well, we'll just have to wait and see how quick the Hasses are this weekend. Kloss has gone up to 5th as well. So, so far looking to be pretty strong showing so far for Haas in this session.
Yeah, maybe they have a good chassis like what Ferrari had last season. They have a good chassis and maybe they could challenge Mercedes and Red Bull. But we'll have to wait and see.
Indeed, as Lopez is overtaking, this is Martins into the first corner here. Lopez currently down in 10th place at the moment, so has not been able to have the pace in this practice session. Again, he may be holding something back for qualifying as Perrin gets by on one of the Williamses there into the chicane, who he's been held up by for quite a while. And, well, it should be interesting to see what the strategy is going to be like with these hard tyres. You would expect most of them will try and go for a one-stop, but could maybe some people push it for a two-stop? I guess it's kind of really depending on the degradation with these tyres, really, as Roke further improves to 1 minute 15.396 as his teammates now getting held up by Felix Sontag. Sontag holding up a train of cars around the S's there. Chatfield now goes up into 5th place, gets himself just in front there of Barch's Kloss. But yeah, it's going to be quite interesting, I think, as well, to see what sort of strategies we could have with these hard tyres.
Yeah, I mean, in Japan, the two-stop really worked, and that's what won George Roke the race, of course. So degradation was high in Japan, so the two-stop was favorable. If the degradation's high here, then I think the two-stop should work here.
Indeed, and we'll have to wait and see what that's going to be the case. Of course, this track is obviously quite difficult to overtake, but it's not impossible, as we can see with Byrne there, and of course what we saw with Perinin. But sometimes it can be a bit of a task to overtake at times, especially if you're on... if you haven't got the straight line speed to match, really, and it can be a little bit of a procession around here, it's fair to say.
Yeah, and of course the advantage between fresh tires and older tires are not this. It's the hard tires.
Indeed, Roke further improves meanwhile to do a 1 minute 15.3 exactly, clearly carrying the momentum over from his victory at the US Grand Prix last weekend. And of course, that was the last US Grand Prix at Austin, as Chatfield goes up into 3rd place meanwhile in the Ferrari. But that was the last US GP at Austin, of course, because the Grand Prix is moving to Road America next season, which will host the opening race of the 2023 season. And I, for one, personally cannot wait to see what these top class guys are going to do around here, around their next season, of course. We've seen what both DTM and World Champ Car have been able to produce around that circuit, and the racing has always been very exciting to see. So, yeah, can't really wait to see what these cars can do around there.
Yeah, can't wait to see what these cars can do around there, but we'll of course have to know what the lineups are going to be the next season, and of course what are the performances going into next season, who's going to be quick, who's going to be slow, and we'll see. Of course, we do have the trends that can give us a little hint, but you never know what can happen.
And of course, Toyota hasn't got a trend, of course, because they are a new team. So it is basically a bit of a mystery, really, in terms of what their pace is going to be like in their return to the series. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see where they end up in all of this. There's a car coming up to the back of Bence Valdinger as he now is coming back into the pits this lap. Currently in 2nd place, 4 tenths off of George Roke, and clearly a man desperate to try and win a race. And, well, you could say that, yeah, I mean, we might as well talk about Carl, really, because we haven't really discussed about him too much. I mean, we talked about how he's not had the best of luck compared to, like, George Roke, but slightly worse. But in the last race at Cota, before his engine died, of course, his pace looked a little bit off.
Yeah, it's surprising that it was nowhere near the drivers in front, and even Galloway, who was on the two-stop on soft tires, of course, don't forget. So yeah, it is surprising that Armour Car had no pace. Maybe he was nursing that problem.
Maybe indeed, as whilst we were speaking there, Byrne has now gone up into 2nd place, so it's now a Red Bull 1-2 in this session, and Quagga has also gone up into 6th place, only 2 thousandths quicker than Barch's Kloss, who's in 7th place. Mocho in 5th now, so far Quagga finding himself in a Haas sandwich at the moment in this session, as Mocho just making his way around the double right-hander. And for the first time in a row, you can hear the dog commentator in the background, but I don't think you'll be hearing her too much at the moment, because we think the barking may be the thing that's causing her to be a little bit wobbly at the moment, but she has got some medication to try and help that. But yeah, but she is home at least. That's the important thing. So anyway, as Mocho 5 tenths down in the middle sector there, as now he will make his way towards the baseball stadium section of the track, really, or the ex-baseball stadium this used to be. But so far, I'm not expecting him to improve, because as mentioned, he was 5 tenths down on his personal best in that middle sector, as he's now going to cross the line in 5th position, probably staying in 5th position. Looks like Sontag having a little bit of a battle there with that. Is Rahul Patel in the Lamborghini. Of course, Lamborghini had Sorry about that. As I was saying, Lamborghini had quite a good weekend at Kota as well, finishing 7th and 10th. Obviously, Ra alluded to it earlier on that Patel got overtaken by Kupok on the last lap, and it was actually for the second race in a row that he got overtaken by an AlphaTauri on the final lap. It seems to be a Patel thing at the moment.
Yeah, it seems to be. I mean, he did get overtaken by Gal, who was a lap down on him. So yeah, maybe that kind of played a part, and also the fact that Wilson and Gal were fighting in front of him. So maybe I don't think he didn't really lose on pure pace. He pretty much lost it down to traffic.
Yep, indeed. And either way, though, double points for Lamborghini, although they did lose 4th to Haas in the Constructors as a result. But they're definitely continuing their little streak that they've got going on at the moment, where they've scored points in every race so far.
Streak.
As Lamborghini, in the 17 races we've had this season, Lamborghini have scored in all of them. And if I were to actually double check on terms of how many points they've achieved in a row, really, if we go back to 2021, of course, they did score at the last race in Brazil, of course, because that's where Rahul Patel took his first ever victory last season. But if I look back at their Constructors' Championship, the last time they failed to score was the Bahrain Grand Prix in 2021. So they've had a streak since Abu Dhabi last season when it comes to points. So will that continue here in Mexico, I wonder?
Yeah, this is pretty much the longest point streak of any other team. Of course, they were a new team last season, so yeah, this is actually not bad from them.
Yeah, indeed, and well, they've had even though this car has definitely not been as good as compared to last season, because of course last season the car at times was able to challenge for podiums and even the odd victory, which is why Chung and Patel were able to get one win apiece last season at both Austria and Brazil respectively. They've still had a pretty decent season. They've been able to do what they've been able to do with the machinery, even though it has frustrated both Chung and Patel this season, it's fair to say. They've still been able to do the job that's required, and who knows really, could they maybe get 4th at the end of the season, which would be their highest finish in the Constructors if they achieve that.
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, 5th is pretty much the most unexpected 5th, because going into this season, they were pretty much behind Ferrari and AlphaTauri. So yeah, I think I could say that they have overperformed, and they've taken their chances.
Yep, indeed. As Chung, meanwhile, speaking of a Lamborghini, just overtakes, I think that's Felix Sontag into the first corner there. She's currently, where is she at the moment? Down in 16th, and the 14th at the moment for Patel. So far the Lamborghini's not showing that much pace so far in this practice session, but maybe they're holding something back. We'll have to wait and see. Well, we're just over 8 minutes to go then. This is what the leaderboard now looks like then as we get into the closing stages of practice. Roke is at the top with Byrne in 2nd. Carr is in 3rd with Chatfield in 4th. Macho in 5th. Quag in 6th. Then it is Kloss in 7th with De Rosa in 8th. Gal in 9th. Lopez in 10th. Galloway just gone up into 11th with Perinen in 12th. Willows in 13th. Patel 14th. Ticelli in 15th. Chung in 16th. Vaderi 17th. Kupok 18th. Sontag in 19th with Valdinger in 20th. Griffiths 21st and Martins in 22nd position. And just as I say that, Lopez has gone up into 2nd place. So he's now just split the two Red Bull drivers, and he's got in front of his main rival, Evan Burns. So far, the top 3 being the same as what it was at Kota last week. So that's that. So far, then, the whole pack now separated by 2 seconds. Martin's the only one to be over 2 seconds of a Roke's pace, as Griffiths, the guy in 21st, currently 1.7 seconds off, but he's still got a 3/10 gap, around a 3/10 gap to Valdinger. Carr improves, but he remains in 4th position. So the top 4, again, being Red Bulls and Mercedes at the moment in this session, as Sontag does not improve. He stays in 19th place in this session. It looks like Kloss is going to overtake him into the first corner. I mean, look at the straight line speed he's got in that car compared to the Lamborghini engine in the back of that Williams there, as Kloss just makes his way around the first chicane there, as he's currently in P8 at the moment, P6 and P8 at the moment for the Haas, but we'll have to wait and see what it's like in qualifying, and we'll obviously have to keep an eye on what the weather's going to be like in qualifying, because we seem to have a bit of a reputation in the last few races of having wet qualifying. So maybe we could get a break this time in Mexico. Who knows, really? But yeah, I think it would be nice to get a break from the wet weather here and there.
Yeah, hopefully, but you never know what the weather what GP4 can produce to us.
Of course, it was a wet race last season here at Mexico, let's not forget. As you can see with the thumbnail, of course, it's being used for...
a wet race that started on dry tyres.
Very, very interesting one, it was fair to say, last season with them tyres. So, yeah, who knows if we're going to have something similar this season, who knows. But, yeah, we'd be interested to see. Meanwhile, Perinen has just gone up into 9th position, so he gets himself into the top 10. At the moment, both Renault's 7th and 9th at this stage, so kind of consistent. I mean, the consistency has been a little bit of a problem this season at Renault, it's been fair to say, not just in the reliability aspect of things, but also in terms of the pace, really. They just seem to be a little bit inconsistent, really, when it comes to one-lap pace. Sometimes the one driver is good, and the other one just gets left behind for whatever reason. But, yeah, that's that, really. Carl was up on his personal best, but I think that's going to go down to down the shredder, really, because Carl got held up there by the Lamborghini, Lamborghini powered Williams into that chicane, as so that lap's gone down into the bin for Armar car, and it was Jamie Griffiths that held him up, because we're currently looking at Sontag has just passed that chicane at that point in time. Lopez further improves meanwhile, and he's now 2/10 behind George Roque, so he extends his gap a little bit to Evan Byrne in this session, as Sontag's just making his way through the S's. De Rosa's coming back into the pits this lap, trying to overtake the Alfa Romeo, very close to comfort there. That is Dominic DeCelli he's trying to get by there, because obviously that's not the shiny Alfa Romeo that Bence Valdinga's currently driving. I wonder if Yuri will try and get that sorted before qualifying, I wonder, because it's a little bit weird. Okay, fair enough then. Seems to be a bit of an issue with image editor from what Yuri just mentioned there. I think a lot of people might have witnessed that during the test stream for this race, but oddly enough, DeCelli's not got that, which is a bit strange. But anyway, as we're now looking at Michael Mocho now, and he's just trying to overtake the Williams there into turn 1, which he does do successfully, that being Felix Sontag, as he just makes his way through into the chicane, really. And we talked about Mocho as well, with that good performance he had at Dakota, and really, he needs those sort of performances in the last 4 races if he's got any chance of still being Kloss's teammate next season.
Yeah, then he's got to take it, and this could be his best opportunity. Of course, Haas's trend is up, so you never know where they could be. I mean, people are saying they could fight with Mercedes and Red Bull, but you never know.
Indeed so. Lopez further improves, and he's now just 10th behind George Roque now. So maybe could he perhaps get to the top of the timing sheets before the session comes to an end, I wonder. That could be something to keep an eye on, and maybe we could have a bit of a battle for pole position in the qualifying session here at Mexico City, as Mocho just making his way towards he's in the baseball stadium now, really, as he comes through the left, right, and then into the Mansell corner. He also approached. Carr goes up to 3rd meanwhile, so an improvement there for him. He gets himself in front of Evan Byrne's Red Bull, but he's still 3/10 off of George Roque at this stage, who's still on 1 minute 15.3 exactly, as Mocho crosses the line. No improvement for him at this stage. It's like Verderi's having a bit of a moment through into that chicane there, as the Aston Martin make his way for the double right-hander. Currently 17th at the moment is Verderi, and he's currently the highest placed Aston Martin in the field at this stage, as Verderi just making his way for the left, right, and left-hander on the racetrack now then. So through the right and left there will go Verderi in the Aston Martin, as Mocho's coming back into the pits this lap, so I think that will be his session done with as a result, with 2 3/4 minutes left. Lopez further improves, and still not gone to the top at the moment. Is that still a 10th? It's exactly a 10th behind George Roque, so he is eking that gap down a bit. So maybe as the session comes to a close, Lopez could possibly go to the top of the timing sheet. It looks like Byrne's getting held up here by Bence Valdinga's Alfa Romeo into that chicane there. I think that's Bence Valdinga, because it looks like the shiny Alfa Romeo. But anyway, as now through into the double right-hander will go Byrne, as he tries to find a way through on Valdinga's Alfa Romeo. Carr further improves, but remains in 3rd place. Griffiths also improves, but stays in 21st position at the moment, and I think he's now finding himself 5/10 clear of Joantis Martins, who's clearly not really up to speed at the moment in this practice session. Just under 2 minutes to go now then in this practice session before we get onto the qualifying session here to determine the grid for tomorrow's Mexican Grand Prix at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in the country's capital of Mexico City, as Quark just coming around that double right-hander there before approaching the S's now. Then he'll go, flicking it in for the left, right, and left he will soon go now then. And that's that for the Frenchman. Of course, obviously was on for a good performance at Kota before we obviously had that crash with Galloway, of course, at the hairpin. Obviously deemed as a racing incident, or more of a case of a bit of the track problem there. Although it was a little bit of a tight judgment that was, because at times it didn't look like it was a track issue, but it was determined that in the end by Yuri that it was. As now Quark just coming around the final couple of corners on the racetrack now then, as we have just over a minute to go now then in this session. So Quag crosses the line now then, as he does not improve, and I do wonder if we are going to stick with the drivers now for the remainder of the session, which I think we are going to do now, as my messenger just went off there. But Perinin will get one more lap in before the session comes to a close now then, as he just makes his way through into the stadium section now then, through the Mansell corner he goes, and then into the second half of the Peraltala, as Perinin will start one more flying lap before practice comes to a close, which he does do now then. And now we look at Roke, who does not improve, stays where he is for the time being. Joseph Willows now then in the McLaren, just making his way around the final couple of corners. He will go. Willow's currently 13th at the moment in this session, behind Jake Galloway, and Willow's now then just coming across the line now then, and he does not improve, stays in 13th position, unlucky for some of course. Valdinger, 20 seconds left on the clock, he will now come across the line himself. Across the line goes Bence Valdinger, no improvement, he stays down in 20th. De Rosa will get one more flying lap in, 13 seconds left. Galloway up on his personal best, 10, 9, 8, 7, and then it's 6, 5, 4, and then 3, 2, 1, and now 0, and the checkered flag is out. That's the end of the session. Galloway was the last car to cross the line, as he improves but stays in 12th position. Martin's up on his personal best. Can he get closer to Griffiths across the line? He can, but he stays in last position to finish off the session. It's not exactly great for him. Kloss across the line, no improvement, stays where he is. Quark across the line, no improvement for him. DeCelli just getting some mileage in the Alfa Romeo, so much needed mileage, as he's not driven the car before this session. There's now Jesus Perrin, and now they're making his way through into the stadium section, although DeCelli's done a pretty decent job on his first practice session in the top class really, and getting ready for his first top class race here at Mexico tomorrow, as now Perinin just comes around the final couple of corners himself, up on his personal best, as Perinin now then comes across the line. Can he improve? And he can. He goes up into 7th position, I think that says in the end, as Willows just coming around the final couple of corners himself. Looks like no improvement for the two-time world champion, as he just rounds the final couple of corners himself through the final turn and onto the pit straight now. Then will come Joseph Willows in the McLaren. He now crosses the line, no improvement, stays where he is. Bence Valdinger just rounding the final couple of corners himself, as he will now come across the line now then in the Alfa Romeo, and no improvement, stays where he is. De Rosa across the line, no improvement. Galloway, the last car to cross the line, he is up on his personal best, so let's see what Galloway can do as he now comes onto the pit straight. And Galloway now then across the line, he will go, and he improves to go up into 8th position, and he was the last car to cross the line. So that is practice done with Roke at the top, Lopez in 2nd, and Carr in 3rd. And yeah, looks to be a very interesting qualifying session, Ra.
Yeah, we don't know who's going to be best of the rest out of all of them, but right now it's down to Mason and Red Bull for pole position.
As expected, really. Well, we're just going to pause the stream, of course. We'll obviously come back for the fresh stream to start the qualifying session. But in the meantime, I've been JW97. He's been Ra, and we'll see you in just a little bit for the qualifying session. See you in a bit.